Yes, I'm the Alexander County Veteran Service Officer, and today I'm here with Ben Hines. Ben, would you like to tell us your date of birth and when you were born?
I was born May the 14th, 1933.
Okay, and the community that you live in now?
Ellendale community.
Okay. What did you do before you joined the military?
I drove a Farmall M tractor, sometimes a Farmall H tractor on the farm, doing all kinds of farm things, planting corn, picking corn, planting cotton. We even had tobacco one year, or a couple of years, and it was hard work back there.
So, how did you feel about the military before you joined? What were your thoughts about the military?
I didn't have much thoughts at all. I knew that I had got warning that from the recruiter service here in the county, and a guy came over to refuel those tractors that we drove. His name was Buddy Combs, and he dared me to go with him and join in the Air Force before the Army called us.
Okay.
And so I agreed with him that we'd meet and go talk to the recruiter about the Air Force, and I did.
Okay, so you were actually not drafted, you volunteered before they drafted you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you said you were in the Air Force.
Right.
Which unit were you with? Let me start this by saying I know you retired, so you were probably with a lot of different units.
Right.
Can you kind of go through briefly and tell what units you were with and what your jobs were in each unit?
Right. Well, to get to my first unit, it started out in Statesville, to Charlotte, to Atlanta, to Houston, to San Antonio, Texas. We get off of the plane in San Antonio, Texas. This guy gets on the plane to lead us off, and he fussed at us all the way from the airport out to the base, which was Lackland Air Force Base. And that was my beginning at Lackland Air Force Base. And then from there, it was to Shepherd Air Force Base for training to be an aircraft mechanic. Now, at the time when I went into the Air Force, I volunteered to be a heavy equipment operator, security police, and then food service. That was the things that I volunteered for, and I ended up getting aircraft maintenance.
Well, that makes sense.
And I went to school on the B-29 bomber that dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. But that was my first assignment going to school at Shepherd Air Force Base. Graduated from there. Then it was off to Hunter Air Force Base, Savannah, Georgia. Spent 9 years and 4 months there. So when the Cuban crisis came along, I got notified that I was going to Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. So anyway.
Why not Minot?
Why not Minot? So I'm off to North Dakota, and there's 3 of us, drove up. We left Savannah with everything pretty and green, and then we arrive up in North Dakota. There's snow on the ground. There's drifts of snow, and I thought to myself, how will I ever get out of here? So anyway, I vowed to myself that the first opportunity that I had to leave Minot, North Dakota, I would take it. And then later on, it gave me opportunity to go to F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And this is all in missiles now left aircraft. So I'm in missiles and go down to F.E. Warren. I had a team of, there's 4 of us on the team. I was the team chief, and we would remove the missiles from the silos and put them back in. We called it emplacing the missile. So we did that, and then one day I got chosen to go to the 3901st Missile Evaluation Squadron. That was at Vandenberg Air Force Base. So I was out there 4 years plus. Then from there to Whiteman Air Force Base, that once upon a time was Sedalia Air Force Base. And I was there as a maintenance supervisor at this time. And at one time I had 82 personnel under me that I was in charge of and responsible for. Even in the night, I was responsible for it. And so anyway, that was really the challenge of my life.
So you had a lot of sleepless nights.
Sleepless nights, and getting up in the night and getting calls at 4 o'clock in the morning that he didn't have any clean fatigues and stuff like that. And then had couples having troubles with each other, and just all kinds of things. And so I earned my stripes there.
There you go.
And then from there I became the senior enlisted advisor, and that was probably one of the best jobs I ever had, because I could go do whatever I wanted to. If I wanted to go to graduation of some of the troops down in Barksdale, Louisiana, I could go anytime I wanted to. All I had to do is just tell them to cut a TR for me, and then I'd go up to Kansas City, get on a plane, fly down there. But better than that, they'd pick me up at home and drive me up there, and I'd get on a plane, and when it came back, I'd give them a call, and they'd come pick me back up, take me back to Whiteman Air Force Base. But that was all just a lot of fun, and then that's where I retired.
Okay. So how long did you end up serving, total time?
Total time was 31 years.
Okay. And you were the...
Senior enlisted advisor.
So you were a Chief Master Sergeant.
Chief Master Sergeant.
Okay. Did you ever have any overseas service?
Well, my overseas service was always TDY, temporary duty.
Right.
I would go like to Sidi Slimane, North Africa. Did that a couple of times. Go to Nuasur, North Africa. Go to Morón, Spain. To England, different flights to England. But these were all go over there and stay so long and then come back. And
now, is that when you were in missiles or in the maintenance?
that was
part
in the aircraft.
Okay, okay.
That was my overseas experience. With missiles, I came really close to going to Johnson Island for a year. But that somehow or other I missed that.
Okay. Was the military anything like you had envisioned it would be once you got in there, or you just really didn't have any idea what to expect?
No, I didn't. But what I did come to realize, I came to realize that I had the same chance that everybody had. I had quit high school to work on the farm,
Right.
because that allowed me to get a car.
Okay.
And then that allowed me to get a date. and so that was my life there, and I probably would have stayed on the farm. But anyway, that cold November morning, I took off with this buddy Combs to join the Air Force. And so having done that, I come to realize that I could do and be whatever I wanted to be. And if I wanted to work hard and keep that B-47 clean and looking good, and the air crew come out to pre-flight it, to take off, make it look good, make it smell good in the cockpit, do all those things, and I could excel, you know, and,
Right.
and I could be up there where those that had college degrees were. And I always saw it in doing my job on the bomber was kind of saving people's lives.
Right.
Because if I did my job right, the plane would take off and come back and land,
Right.
and we'd taxi around and park, and then we'd get ready for another flight.
Right.
So I saw that as doing something that saved people's lives.
Exactly. You said you went to Shepherd Air Force Base or Lackland Air Force Base for your
First.
basic training.
Right.
Do you remember anything about your basic training? Were you scared, nervous, excited, or?
No, what happened is, what I remember, I remember having a TI as a TAC instructor. And he was he wasn't mean, but he kind of sort of mean. He'd really get in our case. And if you when you say, by the right flank, harsh. And if you went left, you got to carry a rock for a while in your right hand to know which is
So, you know.
right. And I did that a couple of times, you know, where I'd make the wrong turn. But I soon learned. But what I remember in basic training is that we're all doing everything together.
Right.
We all got our hair cut off together. We got fatigues together. We had to wear the same uniform together. So anyways, that was one of the things I remember. And then in basic training, there was 2 Hines, H-I-N-E-S. And this one, I don't want to be bad-mouthing somebody, but he was just doing stuff wrong all the time.
Right.
And they blamed me for it.
Oh, no.
And they'd call me out, you know, and I didn't do that at all. And so, but it was hard to explain to the TI that you didn't do that, because
Right.
he'd come around some way that he didn't make the mistake by calling you out. He'd just get in your case.
Right.
So, but that's the part I remember of basic training.
So the friends that you met when you were in basic training, since you had such a long career, did you cross paths with them again later on? Or
Sometimes.
did you just lose touch altogether?
Mainly lose touch altogether, because there some of them was real good friends and would do things together, but I don't even know where they are now.
So once you moved to another base and everything and moved to a different phase of your training
Right.
or preparation, then you just didn't run into them anymore. They took a
Right.
different path,
Yeah,
so to speak.
and it would be lonely for a while because
Right.
all those guys you were with and got to know, they're not there anymore.
Right.
It's somebody new, and you had to start learning to know different people and get acquainted with them.
Right.
And there was something like a thread that kind of ran through that if they were from North Carolina, they'd put them in a different category. It seemed like you knew them because they were from where I was from.
Right.
And that there was something there that kind of kept you
Right.
focused.
Okay. What did you think of the officers that you served under?
I thought they were pretty fine people, like our wing commanders and all. We had a wing commander in Missouri, and he's getting ready to have change of command. And his name was Codas, William Codas, Bill Codas, full colonel, fine person. And he came one day and he asked if we could take the B-47 that was on static display at a different place on the base, if we could move that B-47 up to where they had a Minuteman missile anchored in a vertical position. If we could move that bomber to be up there with it, and it's going to call it the Peace Park.
Right.
Well, that Peace Park still exists today, and he asked if we could move that plane up there. And I told him I believe we could. So we ordered a tow bar. That's how you moved a B-47 with a tow bar. And we hooked 2 ukes to it. That's big tractors and that have tow bars hooked to them.
Right.
So that they hooked this, or we hooked this tow bar to 2 ukes and went across the field. And it was soft across the field, and that bomber was heavy. So when we'd come to a ditch, and all the intersections had ditches for drainage, we had to fill those in with railroad ties for the main landing gear to go across. And we'd have to go across that ditch and get all those and go to the next ditch and put them in it. And probably the tiredest I have ever been in my life was when we went through that exercise. But it took about 8 days for us to move the plane up. And when we got it up there and got it on some concrete blocks to be secured, we were just hours away from the change of command. And so what we did is we prepared a capsule, a time capsule, that's still in that plane today out in Missouri. And the questions comes up about it every once in a while. But we did that in 1976. We put that capsule in, but what we did is we let that wing commander that was leaving in that change of command to fasten the latch on the navigator's hatch where he would eject from.
Right.
And set it up in the cockpit. And it's there today. It's got some money, that was our money that we put in this capsule. And we had the paper, the latest issue of the paper from Sedalia and from Kansas City. And different things that we could have as something from then. We got postage stamps that was stamped for that year on it. And that's all sitting up in the cockpit. And it would be of value to somebody someday if we ever go in and get it. But anyway, that was a little B-47 story and something that I'll remember forever.
So you said your favorite job in the military was when you were the senior enlisted advisor. What was your most memorable experience, either then or in a different time?
Well, memorable experience. Well, when I retired, they gave me a parade.
Just for you,
for me.
because you were retiring?
Retiring, And that made me feel pretty good.
Well, sure.
But I cried, though.
Well, that's okay.
You see, when I was out on the reviewing stand, as the troops passed in review, all those blue uniforms coming down, the band's playing, and the band playing, that was always one of my favorite times.
Right.
And being in the parade was no issue with me, because it just was wonderful there when they do the Stars and Stripes Forever and all those good marching songs. Washington Post, all that. It just was exciting.
Makes you swell with pride, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it did, and I was just glad I got to do that.
Well, very good. And you said that during the Cuban Missile Crisis that you thought you were going to have to do something special. Tell us about that.
Well, the Cuban crisis, first of all, I was in the Azores Islands, stationed there for 90 days.
Tough duty.
I know it.
Real tough.
And so anyway, I get notified while in Azores that I had to come back to the States because I was being shipped to Minot Air Force Base. So, and if you know the time at Minot that I went up there, that was in '62. So the Cuban crisis was in that October, '62. And just before that, the crisis, I was in the Azores, like I said. So anyway, I come back to Hunter. The Cuban crisis is on. The B-47s are all on alert. And when they're on alert, everything is ready to go to start the engines.
Right.
And all that would happen is the air crew would go up the ladder and hit the start for number 4 engine, and it would be turning over as they're getting in their seat. When it got to 6%, they'd put it into the start detent, and then the engine would be running. And then we'd be out there as fire guards, number 4, 5, 6, 3, 2, 1. Starting all the engines. As quick as the engines got started, we pulled the power chocks and interphone, and then went out and brought the plane out.
Right.
And what we would do out there with that plane being cocked like that and ready, with the bomb on board, the drag chutes on board, the weapons in the back, the tail guns, all the ammunition is back there. They're ready to go to war. So when the crew came and hit the ladder, we started the engines and it would go out. But we had to sleep with the plane, sleep at night at the forward main landing gears, usually where we would keep ourselves. And what our instructions were, if the maintenance vehicle came down the line blowing the horn, we were to get up and be at the power unit ready to turn the switch on. With the power unit running. But you didn't turn the switch on, you didn't apply power to the aircraft till the air crew hit the first step on the ladder. So when they hit that first step, we giving them power, the engine's turning, and then they would taxi out, all lined up, probably minimum interval takeoff. The minimum interval takeoff was every 15 seconds. No, 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, the B-47 went out on the runway. Every 15 minutes, right. And so what would happen, there'd be just a cloud of smoke, and the planes was going out. And one would go left, one would go right, one would go up a little higher, where they wasn't in the slipstream of the plane in front of them. So anyway, sleeping with the plane at night, that was kind of a trying time.
So did you have a sleeping bag or a cot or mattress or anything out there?
No, but we had our luggage was on board.
Right.
So what I was to do is when the engines all started, I went up into the cockpit, closed the door, the cabin pressurization door, and I was going with the plane, wherever the plane goes. We all had that, you know, every crew chief was going to fly on this mission, and we didn't know where we'd come back to. No idea.
So you had to go prepared for anything.
Right. And my family had sent them from Hunter, Savannah, Georgia, up to Taylorsville, North Carolina. They stayed up here because this was home up here. So in that crisis time, they're up here and I'm down there and sleeping with the plane at night. Right.
Okay. In your travels, did you have plenty of food to eat, and was it good food? And
in the military?
Did they take good care of you when you were gone?
Absolutely. And if anybody around here wants to know what it was like, all they've got to do on the first Saturday of every month, go down to the DAV building, which is on Kerrigan Road, and you'll see the evidence of a military chow hall, dining hall, whatever you want to call it. But it was chow hall to some, it was dining halls to some. But anyway, the way it's structured and how they handle it down there, you'll have someone over on the coffee and orange juice, someone's on the serving line. There's certain ones that's making sure the tables stay straight and clean, and there's people back doing the eggs and the bacon and all that. But everybody has a certain job,
Right.
and you about know who's at what job when you go down there. And your husband, Sir Michael, he's usually over there with the coffee and all, and also wheeling and dealing.
He's the PR person.
PR,
I think.
wheeling and dealing.
You're right. Now, since you did so much time in the military, you weren't married when you started in the military, correct? Or were you?
I got married 2 years after I went in the service, on that day.
Okay. So your wife, and you were able to take your wife and your family with you to your different locations?
Yes.
Most of the time.
And in the early part, you know, we didn't well, there was base housing, but you couldn't get it because you're just a peon.
Right.
You're kind of new, and you don't get housing right off of the bat. You got to earn your stripes.
Right.
And that comes up. And but one of my stories on the plane was we got married in November of 1954. In February, now we're talking about a short distance of time,
Right.
February, I get a note on the door that I'm the acting crew chief on 52075. And my station time, that's when you got to be out the plane, my station time is 4 o'clock that morning, so that we're like 10 o'clock coming in from a movie that we'd gone to. So I've got just that little bit of time, and I'm going to be the acting crew chief, and I'm responsible for getting it ready to take off, like hydraulic fluids and in the levels and at the ACUs out in the wings that dealt with the ailerons and getting it ready for flight. And here comes the air crew out. So we hustled around there and got it ready, and they pre-flighted, started engines, and took off. Well, when it came back, and that particular day, the first one, I was to have a turnaround mission, because it was going to land, and we refueled it and put another drag chute on it and checked everything, and then the crew would pre-flight it again, take off the second time, but it never did get that far because the plane had so many things wrong with it. So write-ups, you know.
Right.
So we had to get them all cleared. But anyway, that started it, and I was a two-striper at that time, really down the line. So anyway, I did the best I could, and and then finally they made me the permanent crew chief on it. So that went on, and
then after that, it probably didn't have near as many write-ups, did it? I didn't think.
No, because I knew how to get it fixed.
Right.
But anyway, that was just a good time.
What kind of awards or decorations did you receive for your time in the military?
Well, at the time in the military, it was in 1958. I became the first master crew chief in the Strategic Air Command and in the 2nd Air Force. But meaning that I was the one that first was named that, and I wore a patch that said Master Crew Chief, 2nd Air Force. Then later it was Master Crew Chief, Strategic Air Command. So anyway, that was some of the earlier awards. And I won in 1961, I believe. No, it wasn't 61. But in an early time in my career, I was named the Airman of the 6th month.
Oh, good.
So that's not far after I had become the crew chief in that 1955. In 55. So anyway, in 55 I became the crew chief, the acting crew chief, and then that coming in 55, I believe it's that June, I was named the Airman of the 6th month. And so then go on in that 1955, there's a hurricane coming into Savannah, and we had to move all the bombers out.
Right.
And the bomber that I had, that 52075, was going to Sedalia Air Force Base in Missouri. So we take off in the night to get away from the hurricane.
Right.
And so we landed out there, and we had to stay with the plane till we got it refueled. And then after it was refueled, they would tow us out in line, B-47, all in a row,
Right.
Nose to tail, nose to tail. And then at that point, I could go to the barracks. In the day room. They put cots in there for us. So we stayed in the day room, and then when it came time to leave, which is 2 days later, the hurricane has now passed Savannah, and we were cleared to come back. So anyway, that night we took off, and it was in the dark. It was B-47, B-47, B-47. They kept passing the power unit down to the next plane, and we'd just take off. So that night we took off, and we climbed up to 33,000 feet. And the aircraft commander said, with a popping sound in the cockpit, "We've lost cabin pressure. Everybody go on 100% oxygen." So at that time I had a headset on, which was common. We all wore just a headset because you didn't have to have the oxygen mask on unless the cabin pressure was above 10,000 feet.
Right.
So when you get up at the higher altitude, you had to have oxygen, but we didn't have to at that particular point at 33,000 feet. So anyway, that popping sound, we lost cabin pressure. It just fogged up in the cockpit, and I passed out
Oh, mercy.
at 33,000 feet. Just like Payne Stewart, the golfer, he passed out, but they didn't come back too.
Right.
Nobody got him back on oxygen. But the navigator looked back at me because he was up in the nose of the aircraft, and since we'd lost cabin pressure, they're checking everybody to see if everybody's all right, and I'm passed out. So anyway, he tells the co-pilot to get down out of his seat and get me back on oxygen. So he does, and when I came to, after I got the oxygen, the aircraft commander is squawking on the airways, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday," and I just knew that we were going in. I knew that it was curtain time for me.
Right.
And the first thought that on my mind after I came back to is, in that ordeal, back in North Carolina, they would say he never saw his first child. Because my wife was expecting that August, and this is in August that this happened. So I had every reason to believe that we were going in. And anyway, we did, and we dropped down to 10,000 feet. And that's the only time in my career that I was afforded the opportunity to make a decision of which way we go. You know, do we go back to Hunter, or do we go back to Sedalia? Which way, where we're going to go. And it was left up to me. The aircraft commander gave me that authority to choose which way we'd go. And so I said, I prefer to go back to Hunter because we're somewhere out between Sedalia and Hunter. And so we went on to Hunter, landed, pulled off of the active runway, and there's fire trucks and ambulances, all the lights are flashing everywhere.
Right.
And it pulled the plane off, let the ladder down, got me back off of the aircraft, took me to the hospital, and shook me down to see if I was all right.
Right.
Because something could have got damaged or something. But anyway, we go to the hospital. Now, like I said, the wife is expecting, so they didn't want her to know about any of this. So a friend of ours picked her up and took her to the base and didn't tell her anything about any of this, just that we're going to meet him in a different place. He's going to be over at the hospital. Not to get her all shook up because she could have a baby right then. But anyway, we go over to the hospital. They come over to the hospital and pick me up there, and then after I'd been checked out, I'm released. So time went on and the baby was born that August the 24th.
Very good.
Her name was Sherry.
So I bet that was kind of scary.
It was scary.
I would have been kind of scared.
Yeah, and so far as how did I feel? How I felt was just being really tired. You know, like if you've had a long, hard day,
Right.
and then you lay down at night and you just drift off. That's what it was, and there's nothing more than that, just a drift off. I didn't see any crosses or anything while I was out. There was no bright light shining out there. The only bright light that I saw was when I came to, and the lights in the cockpit are real red,
Right.
because they are red, like
Right.
at night, and the aircraft commander squawking Mayday. And we were in a rapid descent. I could look up at the altimeter, and it's just spinning.
Right. Because he was trying to get down below 10,000 feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Did you save any of your uniforms, or I know you have mementos and probably photos of lots of different things, but do you still have your uniform and stuff from when you were in the service?
I do. I have it, and that's what I'll be buried in.
Okay.
And when I'm buried, I'm going to request that I have a patch of the Strategic Air Command held in my hand. That's how I felt.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's very. And your family knows about all this.
Yeah, they
Okay.
know it, but they'll know about it before that.
Okay.
And just
you need to tell them.
I know, but lately I've been thinking about, kind of structuring it.
Right.
And it like a song in it. It is well with my soul. I want that in it. And Lord, guide and guard the men that fly. But it needs to be the men and women that fly now. But that's the way the song was written back then.
Right. So you married, and how many children did you have?
5.
5.
Right.
And were they born like all over the place?
Pretty much all over the place. Only one of them was born in North Carolina. And then had one in Cheyenne, Wyoming, 3 in Savannah, and that's a story I like to tell too, because we had 3 in diapers at the same time.
Oh, mercy.
And I would be out before going to work, hanging out diapers on the clothesline with the neighbor ladies, and we'd gossip out there. But it was a trying time, raising babies and out there trying to get on-time takeoffs.
Right.
And I didn't say that, but with the B-47, I led the Strategic Air Command in the most on-time takeoffs. What does that mean? That means that at 10 o'clock this morning, if my plane was supposed to fly, it would be on the runway taking off at 10 a.m. And we had like a 15-minute window.
Right.
We could be 15 minutes beyond that, and it would still count as an on-time takeoff. And on my 197th on takeoff, it was late, but it still took off.
Right.
But it was late. It didn't make that 15 minutes because we had a wire loose on one of the engines, and it was causing the oil pressure not to be there. But if you uncowled it, you'd have oil pressure. So it meant that there's a short in a wire that's checking the oil pressure, the instrument that checked it. So anyway, we uncowled it real quick, shut the engine down, uncowled it, found the bare wire, fixed it. But still, it took off, but it was late. So it made my run stop at that point.
Right, right. And what's been your occupation since you came home and retired from the military?
Well, it started one Friday evening. Some of the neighbors came around and asked me if I would run for the office of Register of Deeds. And I said, I'll think about it. They came back that Sunday afternoon, wanted to know had I thought about it. And I told them I thought about it, and they said, would you go with us to a meeting Monday night? And that meeting was with F.P. Wright's house. It's where Rick French lives today. In that house is whenever I had made the decision to run for Register of Deeds. And I did that because, and the reason I did that, I thought it would be kind of nice in my life to run for something sometime.
Right.
That was my motive. So anyway, I ran and had a map of the county, and we'd mark it every night where I had been. And so when it came to the end, like in that November, October, November, I had this map of the county, and it showed all the places that I had been. But what I would do, I went to school at Wilkes Community College by day, and I'd campaign that evening in a different place in the county. Then that night I would join the others that were running that year and be with them to go out campaigning. So anyway, I would go to school by day and campaign by night. And it paid off, and I won by 267 votes that year.
And you've been the Register of Deeds ever since?
Right.
Okay. Very good. So you continue to serve?
Continue to serve. That's, I think serving is kind of an act of kindness. I think it's an act of, see, Christ did that. He washed their feet and did those type things.
Right.
And he was a servant of the people. And I think the best place you can be is being a servant of the people. I believe that.
And are you active, or do you belong to any veterans organizations here in the county?
Well, I'm a life member of the Sergeants Association, Air Force Sergeants Association, and then the Non-Commissioned Officers Association. And then I participate in about every Saturday, first Saturday in the month. Rarely do I miss one, and I go to them, and I go to the veterans meeting that we have on a Thursday, third Thursday. And
And that's the Legion, the American Legion.
I've stayed active with the veterans, and I had something to do with the bell tower that we have on the courthouse lawn. That was a result of something that we carried over, to continue from the sesquicentennial.
Right.
And it's out there, and we didn't get to dedicate it until 2003. But 2002 is whenever they had that first courthouse. There's a cornerstone in the bell tower commemorating that occasion of the first courthouse with a block in one of the columns. So anyway, participating in them, and we had the Army band out of Fort Jackson here in town, and that was on the 30th of April, 1997, when our county was 150 years old. And but they came, and I was instrumental in getting them here. And I was instrumental in the centennial that we had. That was when in 1987, when we had our Constitution signed.
Right.
And I had a little pen that we had that year, and I had brought it along so Chad could see it. But this is in 1987, and we were raising funds.
Alexander County.
Raising funds, and it was Joel Harbison that started that.
Okay.
That declared Alexander County a bicentennial, 200 years, of our Constitution. And that's the little pin that we would wear around here. And that was in 1987. Then it was in 1989, and that's when George Washington took the oath of President of the United States. And we reenacted that here.
Okay.
And Jerry Campbell and myself and many others participated in organizing that. And we had people dressed up. George Washington was dressed up like George Washington, and his name was Frank Greer. He was our president that year. And he came in on a horse-driven buggy with a bagpipe playing in back of him. But we tried to reenact it just like George Washington did.
Right.
But we did that right here in Taylorsville. And
it's a shame they didn't have video cameras and things like that back then.
but
So
it
you
was
could've got
videoed.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. It was videoed by, he recently passed on, he was a Ruffty, Harold Ruffty.
Okay.
But he filmed that year.
Very good. Did you have a lot of family members or ancestors in the military?
Well, no. Like out of the Hines, out of Stony Point, I was the only one that I know of. There could have been some, but I didn't know of. But I served that time, and pretty much the only one. And I was the only male child of that Hines generation. I had an uncle, had several children, 5, but they're all daughters. But I was the only male child born of that Hines generation. And so I come along and quit high school, and that wasn't very favorable of the family, because a lot of them were teachers of the Hines family. And that wasn't the really
I bet
right.
that didn't go over
It didn't
well.
go over too good. but I think later on they felt that I did okay.
Because you maybe quit high school for Maybe selfish reasons,
Selfish
but then
reasons.
you took it upon yourself to grow up and mature and excel in
There.
what you did. So that's
And I
good.
think the Air Force had a lot to do with guiding of my life.
Right.
I really do.
What would you say to youth today that were interested in the military?
I would say while they're still in school, to be really good in math and really good in science.
Mm-hmm.
Be good in those areas. Take part in the class
Mm-hmm.
insofar as leadership, like be the class president or whatever you could be
Mm-hmm.
on the staff or whatever, the secretary or whatever. Do those things, and then when some congressman or congresswoman comes to town, go and be there, meet them, talk to them, and tell them that one of your goals is to go into the military one
Mm-hmm.
day, and that I'd like to be a Marine. I'd like to go to the academy for the Marines, and just kind of get their thoughts on it,
Mm-hmm.
advice from them, and then when that day comes that you'd want to go into the military, try to get a congressional appointment.
Mm-hmm.
That's your best way. You can get it other ways, but the congressional appointment is the pretty sure way.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but you got to prepare for that to get
Right.
that. And it'll be a good life, and it's going to be a safe life. It's where you work and where you play. It's going to be done right. And if you don't do it right, you're going to go home. And it's just, all you have to do is be disciplined
Mm-hmm.
and do your job.
Right.
If you're supposed to salute out there, saluting an officer, then salute that officer. But remembering that he's got to salute you back.
Right.
And the thing is, it's nothing more than a form of greeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
And it's not, don't put somebody down below the other or above the other. It's something that you do as a form of greeting. It's been going on down through the years.
Right.
And you just need to abide by the rules. Abide by the
Right.
rules. If in the rules they tell you when you're driving a military vehicle that you have a spotter
Mm-hmm.
when you're backing up. So you go ahead and have an accident and not have a spotter. You knew what the rule was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have some action taken against you.
Right.
And they might even take you back home.
Right.
So it's just, I've always said that the military was not very forgiving, but it was a good place to be.
Right. Okay, do you have anything else that you would like to say?
Well, I would like to say that when I was there in the military,
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity while I was working on B-47s to serve under a general. His name was Paul W. Tibbets.
Mm-hmm.
He was our division commander of the 38th Air Division. At the same time, Tom Farabee, that dropped the bomb, that pushed the button, that released the bomb over Hiroshima,
Mm-hmm.
was my deputy commander for maintenance, and I worked for him. And that was something that I'll always hold
Mm-hmm.
in a high place, that I worked for the guy that dropped the bomb and the one that was the commander of Enola Gay.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, that's something that I'll always remember. And then I had been in the Air Force about something like 3 months, and I was working in the dining hall, KP, kitchen police,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in there working, and I get a call from the OSI,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to talk about people that I knew, and I thought my just being in the military, maybe it's for security clearance or something. So anyway, the conversation went on, and he wanted me to go with him on a tour of Wichita Falls, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
that following Saturday night. And I told him that I would. And I got in my uniform and just as sharp as I knew how to be, and waiting there by the barracks, and he comes by and picks me up in a military staff car. And I thought, oh my, I'm really
This is
on a
big.
roll here. This is big. So he picks me up and we go into Wichita Falls, and it's pretty early in the night, and he keeps talking about this guy over here goes with the guy over there, and the guy over there goes with this one over here. And he kept talking about the guys going with guys. And I going along, and I thought, well, back in Stony Point, North Carolina, guys didn't go with guys. What's this all about? So we kept on going, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. We're on the way back to Shepherd Air Force Base. It's just kind of out in the country. He pulls off a little side road, just off to the side, turns the lights off in the vehicle, puts his hand on my left leg. And I thought, oh my, where am I here?
And what did you do?
I told him that I had a splitting headache. No, that really wasn't the way. I really told him that we've got to get back to the barracks.
Right.
And so we got back to the barracks. But he had promised me that night if I stayed with him and worked with him, that I wouldn't have to pull KP anymore. But that next time around, I was back in there pulling KP.
You were glad to do it then,
Yeah.
weren't you?
Wasn't any problem.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you for your service to our country and our county.
Well, I would like to tell one more story.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I do that?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
I'm going to need this from here for that.
Okay.
Now, what it is I just wanted to share with you a thought before I tell the story.
Okay.
There was a guy that wrote a poem called High Flight. And he lived in England. He was a lieutenant. He was with the British. And he's flying one day, practice training, and they crashed. So when they went to his footlocker to get his personal affairs, they found this poem called High Flight. So now with that High Flight, later on I went to visit my son in England, that was in the Air Force, and he took me to the gravesite of the guy that wrote High Flight. So what my point is here on the High Flight, every once in a while, when we'd be flying up at 40,000 feet, I would come around in back of the co-pilot where I'd be looking in reverse.
Right.
And I could see the contrails of the jet engines swirling out in the clouds. And sometimes while I would be there, I would think to myself that, oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silver wings. Sunward I've climbed and done 100 things you've never dreamed of. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've toppled the wind-swept heights, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while hovering there in the sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
You had a very good office when you were in that airplane, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
The best one in the world.
Yeah, in the world. And I'm just grateful that I got to do the things that I did. And I'm
Right.
grateful to the people of Alexander County that lets me do what I do today.
And we do appreciate what you do. And we're glad you shared your story with us. I think everybody will enjoy hearing about it, and it'll just be very special.
Well, I counted it an honor to have served because the Lord gave me the ability, physical ability, to be there, and the mental ability to be there. So therefore, I counted it a blessing, an honor to have served.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Uh-huh.